You know, President Trump is in the news. That's not a surprise with his personality and his uh, strong force of character. And I don't mean that in a bad way. He's the kind of person that enjoys being in the spotlight, and he's the leader of this country. He's the elected president, in spite of what some of my liberal friends would like to think. But earlier this week, he did a lap at Daytona in the presidential limo, and those of us that are his supporters applaud it. There are probably some, and I've surprisingly not heard any yet, but I'm sure there are some who would say that it was a stunt. I don't think it was a stunt. It's who among us would not have taken that opportunity if we had it to take a lap around the track at Daytona in whatever vehicle we could get there to do it in. I know, given the opportunity, this 13-year-old base model F-150 with low power and high miles, that's what I've got to drive. And given the opportunity to run around that track, I'd be doing it in this pickup truck. Probably wouldn't be going much faster than he did in the limo, but it's the kid in all of us that is thrilled by that. And that's my point of this whole message today. The fact that President Trump, in spite of being a multi-billionaire, is more in touch with the average common man than any president we've had, probably going back to the beginning. He stayed true to himself and doesn't let the power and the money go to his head. And I know he doesn't let the money go to his head. The power, I wouldn't say goes to his head. He knows he has the power and he enjoys having it, but does he take more than he wants, than he should have? No, I don't think so. I think what he's doing is being the president that all of us that voted for him wanted him to be. Looking back over my life, I'm at the age where I vividly remember Ronald Reagan. I remember Jimmy Carter. I was old enough to vote for Ronald Reagan in his second term, and I did. But ever since then, until Donald Trump came along, and there was a couple of other candidates when he ran who would also have fit the bill. Ted Cruz comes to mind. And there's been a few others here and there that have done less spectacularly over the years. But as far as when it came down to the actual presidential election, we, meaning the common man who's a conservative, have not had a choice, a real choice, that met our expectations since Ronald Reagan. The closest we came was the two George Bushes. And that was, and they weren't the greatest. Bill Clinton, the absolutely only reason that Bill Clinton won those two terms is simply because the Republicans didn't have a strong candidate. They had a very weak candidate, and you had a third-party candidate who was very strong, but not strong enough. And what that did was split the Republican ticket. Some of us voted for Ross Perot. Some voted for the other candidates. One was Bob Dole, and the other one, I guess, was George Bush Sr. in lieu of a second term, or when running for his second term that he didn't win. Better way to say that. But we didn't have a solid choice. Bob Dole, I'm sure, was a good man, but he spoke about himself in the third party all the time, which is a little bit weird. And ever since then, what have we had? Well, we had 2 terms of George W. Bush. He did all right. Wasn't my favorite. In fact, I didn't vote for him the second time. I voted for a third-party candidate that I knew didn't have a chance, simply because I didn't like some of the things that he had done. And then when Obama was elected, you had something else going on. You had two very weak candidates. You had Mitt Romney, who is a Republican in name only, and still, he's probably the only Republican in his level of election, meaning in the House or the Senate, who still strongly opposes President Trump. He actually sided with the Democrats. He was the only Democrat they're the only Republican that sided with the Democrats in the impeachment mess. So he's a bad example. And John McCain was known as being a maverick, which really meant he sided with the Democrats more often than he probably should have. Yeah, I voted for both of those guys simply because the alternative was unthinkable. Barack Obama. And we know how that turned out. In spite of what some of my friends on the left like to think, Barack Obama was dangerous and horrible for this country. President Trump for 3 years has been trying to dig out of the mess that Obama put us in, and Obama has not given up. He's still out there fighting, and he doesn't have the authority to fight. He's actually probably guilty of the Logan Act, along with a couple other people that just need to go away. And you're not elected anymore. You're done. You had your time. You did a lot of damage to this country. Move on. Let us clean up your mess. But who did we have? We had, like I said, we had Mitt Romney. We had John McCain. The only reason I voted for John McCain was because of his vice presidential choice. She was a true conservative. I looked at John McCain knowing that, he's probably not going to live that long, and he didn't. And there was a fair chance that his running mate would have become president. And she would have been a good choice. I actually predicted her as a running mate for him, much to the surprise of everybody that knew me. But of the ones that were available to pick from at the time, she was the best choice, in my opinion. And that's really when the Democrats really started showing their true colors. They tore that poor lady's life apart. And and they've been doing it ever since. They've done it to every Supreme Court justice that we've nominated, every presidential candidate that's been nominated, and they're still doing it to President Trump. But the point is, why do most of us like Donald Trump? We like Donald Trump because Donald Trump does and says what we would do. And he does it with authority. And the Democrats hate him for it. They hate him because they generally don't like us. And they see him, and he is truly one of the people, in spite of the fact that he's a billionaire. It's as if you took anybody, any of your average, hardworking, common man, and put him in a position like that. We would do what he's doing. And we would probably say things like he says them. We didn't elect him to stand there and look presidential and look like a politician and be politically correct. We hired him for the job because he is not politically correct. And he doesn't mince words. He says what he means, and he means what he says, and he follows through with it. Has he followed through with everything? No, he hasn't, but he has tried. He's had enormous opposition stacked up against him, and in spite of that, has done remarkably well. The economy has turned around in 3 years faster than anybody had any hope of experiencing. I truly believe that had President Trump not been elected, had we gotten Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, both of whom were very popular at the time, either one of those would have continued down the horrible road that Obama had us on, and in Bernie's case, gone far worse. The Democratic candidates we have now, we've got a presidential election coming up later this year. You've got a handful of candidates out there. The leader among them is Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is an avowed communist and socialist. And I know you younger people who are watching this saying, well, what's so wrong with that? Read a history book once in a while. It's never worked at all, ever, anywhere. And I know with the next phrase that comes to everybody's mind who is on that side of the fence says, well, they didn't do it right. Well, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And communism and socialism and Marxism and fascism, yes, fascism is on the left, not the right. You guys are wrong about that. All of those are variants of socialism. Not the Nazi Party was the Democratic Socialist Party. And if that doesn't describe what we've got going on today on the liberal side of things, I don't know what does, especially when it comes to people like Bernie Sanders. He's made it a promise, mind you, to increase our taxes, lower our wages, tear down the border wall, let anybody and everybody who wants to come into this country come in and do anything they want to do. He is the exact polar opposite of anything anybody could remotely call good for the people of this country and for this country. President Trump is what we need right now. Does he say things that no other president has said? Yes, he does. Do I have a problem with it? No, I don't. Does he use language that people in polite society don't use? Yes, he does. He uses language I don't use. Do I care? Not really. He is who he is, and he's doing the job that we hired him for. We didn't hire a priest to get up there and bless this country and politely ask if things are okay and is it okay if I change this, because that will never work and that'll never get things done. We needed somebody with the personality, the strong force of character that he has, to walk into the room, be the center of attention, and understand what everybody in rural America, and that makes up the majority of this country, the overwhelming majority of this country, he understands us. So yeah, when he took a lap around Daytona in the limo, I applauded. I applauded because nobody else has done that. Not because it wasn't right for them to do it, but because it never occurred to them to do it. He did it because he went there, saw a racetrack, and said, as president, I'm not allowed to drive a car, and he's not, and that's sad. But I can ride in the back of this limo, so let's go a lap around the track. He said himself, if he was allowed to do it, he'd be in a car out there running right along with him. And every one of us would have applauded it. But yeah, Donald Trump is a true American. He understands the common man in a way that no other politician can. And if you think there's another billionaire out there, he's actually got a lot more money, from what I understand, than Donald Trump does. And he's running for president as a Democrat. But look at what he's done. I'm talking about Bloomberg, the one that President Trump calls Mini Mike. He's 5'4". That's why he calls him Mini Mike. But he has done and said some of the most horrible things that anybody could do or say. He looks down on literally everybody. If you're not a very wealthy, white, liberal, he looks down on you. And not only does he look down on you, he wants you to be eliminated. He made the comment that old people shouldn't have any medical care at all. He said he put all the police, when he was in charge of New York, he put all of the police in Black and Hispanic neighborhoods because he said that's where all the crime is. He made it illegal to buy a soft drink bigger than 16 ounces. Is it a good idea to drink a bigger soft drink than that? Probably not. But that's my right as an American to choose what I put into my body as far as foods. It's the unbelievable arrogance of a totalitarian dictator, and that's what he would be. And trust me, Bernie Sanders would be no better. And by the way, Bernie Sanders will be 79 years old when he's elected. Is he ready to go 4 years or 8 years as president? That would put him through most of his 80s. And I don't have anything against old people. My grandfather lived to be 100 years old, and I wish he was still here. But someone who's already clearly out of touch with the American people, do you really want him in charge? Especially someone in their 8th decade of life? When you get to that point in life, it's time to, to turn the reins over to somebody else. And nothing Bernie Sanders has done in his entire life has been good. Even his own wedding, he took his wife to Moscow, Russia on his honeymoon. That was the Soviet Union at the time. That was a city and a place that utterly hated America. And that's where he took his wife. So that says a lot about his character. Anybody on the left side of the fence in today's day and age, after looking at 8 years of Obama and the 3 years of the Democrats doing everything they can to oppose President Trump, if you can still call yourself a Democrat today and you like what these guys are saying on the left, you really need to examine yourself, because there's something wrong with your way of thinking. You're not an American. You're at least, you don't think like an American. You want to destroy this country, and you want to put in its place a totalitarian dictatorship that will make Venezuela look like a good place to go. And 20 years ago, Venezuela was a good place to go. I don't want to see America become that. But that's my opinion. I'm John. I'm the Hat Guy. Have a great day.